The first lesson plan we're going to walk through is a second grade lesson plan. It's a language arts literacy lesson plan. I've backed up and I'm going to show you the first two sections of the lesson plan just so the methods and activities will make sense to you. The Common Core standard that this student has chosen is RL27, which stands for Reading Literature Second Grade Standard 7. This falls under the heading of Integration of Knowledge and Ideas, and the standard says, use information gained from the illustrations and words in a print or digital text to determine understanding of its characters, setting, or plot. Now her objective for this lesson that is working toward that Common Core state standard. And keep in mind, again, that it is only one small piece of what students will need to know to master that Common Core standard by the end of the year. So her learning goal or her objective for this lesson states, the student will be able to identify and demonstrate an understanding of the main characters, setting, problem, and solution in Cowgirl Kate and Coco by Erica Silverman. Okay, I'm going to move down just a little bit so you can see the next section. Why have you chosen this objective? I have chosen this objective because it is a part of the student's Common Core state standards for this grade level. I have also chosen this objective because it is a natural progression of skills and learning based on the student's previous learning. This objective will also be the foundation for future reading and literacy skills and developing the higher order thinking skills. So she is stating that this lesson will be building on what the students have already learned, and it'll be setting that foundation for future learning. Okay, in the next section, in her student grouping, how will you group your students for instruction? In the beginning of the lesson, I will use whole group instruction with the students. After whole group instruction, I will group the students into 3 sections for a small group activity. The students will be placed into groups based on their academic level. To conclude the activity, I will bring the students back to whole group discussion to report out. To conclude the lesson, I will evaluate the students' understanding through an independent activity. Okay, in the next section you will see her rationale for her grouping. Why have you chosen this grouping? She states, I have chosen this student grouping method because the lesson is best matched with beginning and whole group discussion. This is the most efficient way to deliver the information and allows for thinking aloud and modeling to let students see what is expected and clear up misconceptions before they try on their own. Working in small groups for the activity and reporting out whole group will best facilitate working with peers, collaborating ideas, and solving the higher order thinking questions, and allow me to provide closure to the lesson and check for understanding as a group. Assessing their independent task will allow me to provide individualized instruction if needed. I will better be able to assess the students throughout the lesson with these grouping procedures. Okay, the next section is the methods or instructional strategies section. Keep in mind this is not the same as activities. These are the methods you will use to deliver your instruction. Okay, what teaching methods will you use for this lesson? She states that the methods that I have chosen to teach the content of my lesson will be brainstorming, lecture with discussion, modeling, small group activity, report back session, and independent evaluation. At the beginning of the lesson, the students will brainstorm ideas. Then, as a class, we will discuss the book and its contents. I will model for the students on choosing main ideas, reading strategies, and asking higher level thinking questions. The students will be assigned a group for their small group activity. Finally, the students will report back and the lesson will end with a concluding discussion. I will evaluate the students through an independent activity. The Marzano's high-yield instructional strategy that I will use during this lesson are setting objectives and providing feedback and cooperative learning. Her rationale for choosing these methods. I have chosen the brainstorming method because it is the best way for students to begin thinking about the content that is about to be presented. The students can use the brainstorming method to hypothesize what will happen in the story. The lecture with discussion method will be used because it is the best way to deliver the information to students. The modeling method will allow me to show the students how to identify the story elements. The small group activity will allow me to better assess the students on a more individual basis as I travel around the room. I will be able to assess the students' ability to work in groups. The report back session will allow the report back session will allow the students to ask questions and clear up any misconceptions. The report back sessions will also allow the students to present their information to the class. The independent evaluation will allow me to evaluate each individual student's progress and understanding of the content and objective. Okay, next is the activities portion of our lesson plan, and keep in mind that this is where the meat of our lesson will be. This is where our actual teaching will take place, and keep in mind that I want you to follow the explicit teaching format as you write this part of your plan. Okay, what activities have you planned? She states, at the beginning of the lesson, the students and I will transition to the carpet and I will introduce the book, Cowgirl Kate and Coco by Erica Silverman. I will allow the students time to brainstorm ideas about what the book is about and introduce the higher order thinking comprehension strategies. During her explanation, I will inform the students that today we will be identifying the characters, setting, problem, and solution in a narrative text. I will explain that this helps us to be better readers by helping us to better understand the story as we read. During the modeling portion, she states, I will explain to the students how to identify characters, setting, problem, and solution in a narrative text. During modeling, I will identify one character in the story, Cowgirl Kate, and one setting in the story, the barn. I will read the story to the students and ask higher order thinking questions throughout the text to reinforce what the students are learning. I will model proper reading and comprehension strategies such as questioning and identifying the story elements throughout the whole group activity. I will think aloud to identify the problem in the story. Now, what you'll notice in her lesson is that there is kind of a blending of the modeling and the guided practice. There's not really a defined line when the modeling ends and the guided practice begins. In her guided practice, she states, while asking students questions throughout the reading, I will ask the students to think of comprehension questions that relate back to the objective. I will ask the students to identify additional characters such as Coco and parts of the setting such as the pasture in the story, similar to the way that I identified the story elements in the modeling portion of the activity. I will then have the students help me identify the solution to the problem in the story. These questions will involve higher order thinking skills and continually build on the comprehension of the text. So there's not a particular time when she really stops modeling and starts guiding practice. After she's identified one character, Cowgirl Kate, when she comes to the next character, which is Coco, she will ask them to identify that character. And that will come before they will discuss the problem in the story. So there's an intermingling of her modeling and her guided practice. But what you need to keep in mind is that everything she's asking the students to do, she's modeled for them before she's asked them to help her do it. Okay, in the independent practice portion of the lesson, the students will be given another text from the Cowgirl Kate and Coco series to work with. I will assign the students into 3 groups and ask them to complete a comprehension activity. I will use chart paper that is divided into sections to represent each of the story elements that we have discussed, and each group will have a small copy of this chart on which to record their information. The students will record their findings and collaborative work in complete sentences. The students in the first group will identify the title of the group book, the characters, and the setting. The second group will identify the problem in the story. The third group will identify the solution in the story. I will assess the students throughout this task with teacher observation and questioning. The report back session, the students will report back as a whole group to show their understanding of the story elements. We will add their information to the big chart, discuss their findings, clear up misconceptions, and allow time for questioning. You'll see we're gonna go down to her assessment or evaluation section in just a moment, and you'll see that that's where she has put in her formative assessment that she will be using, but I really would like you to place it in this area as well. Okay, her justification for choosing these activities. I have chosen these activities because the student will be able to show their understanding and comprehension of the objective by completing these activities. During the reading of the text, explanation, modeling, and guided practice, the students will build on their comprehension skills with prompting, and I will be able to check for understanding throughout the lesson. The students will be exposed to higher order thinking questions and proper reading strategies. The independent practice will allow the students to work efficiently in groups and be in charge of their own learning. This time will allow me to address the needs of my students on a smaller group basis. Okay. We're going to look at her evaluation section now. Although yours is not due at this time, I want to help you see the connection between the objective, the activities, and the evaluation in the lesson. So we're just going to take a look at this really quickly. Okay, how and when do you plan to evaluate student learning on the content of this lesson? At the end of the lesson, I plan to evaluate student learning on the content of this lesson by having the students complete a graphic organizer to display their understanding of the characters, setting, problem, and solution in the book. I will have the students complete an additional story elements chart independently with another text to better assess their own understanding of the story elements in a narrative text. Their finished graphic organizer will be evaluated and assessed for complete understanding after they are given an appropriate amount of time to complete the independent activity. Throughout the entire lesson, I will constantly be using formative assessment through teacher observation and questioning. I will evaluate students on their ability to work in groups, have group discussions, and how actively engaged they are in the lesson. I will use this evaluation to determine where my students stand in their ability to comprehend narrative text and on their ability to organize their thoughts in a written and organized fashion. So you can see that she is looking for those pieces that the lesson was about. She's looking for whether or not they can evaluate or identify those story elements, but she's also looking at other things. She is constantly formatively assessing her students to see if what she is doing is working for them or whether or not she needs to make some changes in her instruction. And this is what true formative assessment is. So you can see that her objective, actually her Common Core standard, her objective, her methods and activities, and her evaluation are all connected. You can see the connections between all of those things within this lesson. I hope this has helped you to better see what's expected for you in this lesson. And we will talk through the material section and talk a little bit more about the evaluation section in next week's video.